We have 66 people to have all of you joining us today for this very important and timely discussion on our 2020 election. My name is Flora Lucero. I am proud to serve you as the chair of the Democratic Party of Bernalillo County. And before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. This webinar will last approximately 1 hour, and the format will be short introductions, an overview of our election from Clerk Stover and her Bureau of Elections Administrator, Nathan Jaramillo, her coordinator, Jaime Diaz. We'll then have some questions and answer time, and some registrants had submitted questions in advance, so we'll go over those. And as Zoom attendees, you're also invited to ask questions using the chat function, which you can find on the Zoom toolbar. This program is being recorded. The recording will be made available on our website, bernalillodems.org, and on our Facebook page, where it is also streaming live. So let's get started. We are in a unique time in our nation's history, facing the most monumental election of our lifetime. National leadership is undermined to freely and fairly elect our leadership. Our president, our Congress, our state and local governments, and many of our judiciary are elected with our votes. No president can decide how many terms they will serve. No president gets to decide when their election will be held. And no president decides how and when citizens cast their ballots and how those ballots will be counted. Fortunately for us, we live in a state with a superb election security system. This is the work of our Secretary of State, Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, and the excellent detailed work of our Bernalillo County Clerk, Linda Stover, and her Bureau of Elections Administrator, Nathan Jaramillo, and Coordinator, Jaime Diaz. Bernalillo County voters decisively chose Linda Stover to serve as our Bernalillo County Clerk in the fall of 2016. Since that time, she has administered fair and honest elections while increasing voter participation. Her team's innovations include introduction of a mobile voting unit and the production of Civic Plaza events for National Voter Registration Day. Clerk Stover also spearheaded educational initiatives to get students interested in civics. And the National Association of Counties awarded Clerk Stover a 2020 Achievement Award in the county category of Civic Education and Public Information for creating a book entitled About My County Activity that engages fourth grade students in civics. Last year, Clerk Stover was elected Vice President of the Board of Directors of New Mexico Counties, a nonprofit, nonpartisan association. She is an active community volunteer bringing a long history of public service to New Mexico and Bernalillo County. Ms. Stover is a native of Carlsbad. She is also a graduate of Sandia High School and studied at Fullerton Junior College and the University of New Mexico. And she has the most fabulous jewelry collection of anybody I know. So it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome Clerk Stover, Nathan Jaramillo, and Jaime Diaz to this conversation. Thank you all for being here with us to give us confidence in what you're doing for this election system. So Clerk Stover, what are you doing? What's going on?
Oh my gosh, welcome everybody. I'm glad to be here. I think it's great that Flora's been able to do this, and this Zoom is really taking off, isn't it? We do all our meetings this way now. I wish I could see all your faces. I've been to your meetings over many years myself. I was vice chair of the Democratic Party for 6 years and state president of Democratic Women for 8 years. So I have walked in your shoes. It can be pretty intimidating at times. We have started our get ready election stuff. It's going to be a great election. It's going to be a big election. There's the pandemic problem, so we're working around that. We're going to be able to make sure that everything is safe and accessible and easy for you to do. The special session this year in Senate Bill 4 gave us permission as clerks to send out absentee ballot applications to every registered voter in our county. And it was up to the county clerks to decide if they wanted to do that in their county or not. And we are in Bernalillo County because we've got like 430,000 voters already in Bernalillo County. We've had some third-party applications come into our county, and I just got an update today. I'll give it to you real quick and let you swallow it. So far, we've received approximately 43,000 applications for absentee ballots. We have processed 28,400, and we haven't even started sending ours out. Those won't go out until September 14th. So we are ahead of the game. We are going to have 72 polling locations on Election Day, 20 early voting sites. We are going to have 2 different places that you can drive through and drop off your ballots. If you come to a polling location and you want to drop off there, we're going to have a fast pass lane where if the poll worker sees that you've got a ballot, you'll be able to go in and deposit your ballot into a locked ballot box and leave. You won't have to stand in the line. I'm looking forward to this. We had a huge turnout for our primary. It was really and truly the biggest primary Bernalillo County had ever seen. That beat the Obama and the Reagan elections, and this was a primary. We processed over 100,000 absentee ballots, and on Election Day, we processed 17,000 absentee ballots. So you figure we're going to have 200 to 300 absentee ballots. I'm excited as I can be. I'll let Nathan and Jamie Diaz, who's actually the chief deputy, go into the weeds a little bit more about how we're setting things up and some of the questions that Flora sent us. If you have any questions for me, tap them in the Zoom. I'm thrilled to be your county clerk. This is an absolute dream job. I couldn't be happier to be here. So thank you all for voting for me. And I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, everybody. I appreciate being here. So I'm going to give you a higher view of what we're doing. So we're modeling off this election off our pandemic election of June, the primary. So we're hoping to have a similar setup of voters showing up to vote. We're hoping that they wear masks. We're going to ask them to wear masks. Our poll officials will have the proper equipment to protect themselves. And we'll also hopefully have a team of people that will sterilize after every voter votes. We do know that what we experienced in the June primary is that we got calls from the media and from people saying, hey, there are long lines at your polling locations, early voting or election day. Well, we have to remember, if we're going to social distance at 6 feet, that line is going to be 6 times as long than normal. We're going to process people as quickly as we can. Now, our ballot does have a lot of items on it. So I think what Linda's going to be getting out soon is that it's very important that have an idea what your ballot looks like before you actually go and cast your ballot in person. Now, if you're voting absentee, that's a different story. But in the absentee method of voting, we would like voters to get those ballots as soon as they can in their hands and really, take their time, do what they have to do, cast their ballot, and get it back to us. Now, if any voter has any question about the reliability of the United States Postal Service, I can say absolutely, I'm getting my bills for next month to pay. So I think the United States Postal Service is doing a wonderful job. But if a voter does have that question, again, Linda mentioned a fast pass or a drop off. Get that ballot ready, take it to an early voting location, drop it off, take it to an early election day convenience center, drop it off. Linda has done one other special thing. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Linda, before I move on.
Okay,
the mobile voting unit and the state fairgrounds.
And then also, okay, we're going to put our mobile voting unit inside the gate at Copper and San Pedro, and there'll be a dedicated lane to where you can drive in, drive through, drop off your ballot, and drive out. You won't even have to get out of your car. You can just come right through and drop it off. It'll be no problem with any kind of interaction. We're also going to put a tent up down at 5th and Marquette and have people drop off things here at the clerk's office. We'll have staff down there and a ballot box. So if you're downtown or across the river and you don't want to go all the way to the fair, you can just come right here and drive by. You won't have to get out of your car. We've made this as totally simple as we possibly can for you to be able to drop off your ballot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. So Linda has again come up with some just wonderful ideas. We know we have to work harder, but we're willing to work harder for the people of Bernalillo County in the state of New Mexico. Because as you mentioned in your opening, this election is very important. Every election is very important. And that's what we do, those are our jobs. So as we move forward into the general election, we are going to, and I'll let Nathan speak on the number of early voting sites we're going to be using, but we're going to engage all of them for the general and all of the election day voting convenience centers. So we have to look back in the primary. We did cut some of those because of the pandemic and because of what we were going through, but we do have a good track record. We asked the question to the state if anybody, if there was any contact tracing back to a polling location, early voting or election day, where a voter may have gotten sick. And as far as we know, and as far as the state has told us, nobody did. So that means that Bernalillo County itself, the clerk's office, our emergency management group did a wonderful job in sanitation rules and fogging the locations periodically and making sure everything was sterilized for the voter. So as many of you know, everybody uses the same voting system across the state. We will continue using those voting systems for this election. We're going to increase the number of ballot on demand stations that we have, that we used in the general versus the primary. So we're expecting not only a large amount of absentee voters, but we're expecting a larger amount than average going to in person. And again, we want to ask people to be safe, but we're still going to provide by law all three methods of voting. So the voter can choose absentee balloting, early voting, or election day voting. And so, and that's important here in New Mexico. And I want to make one more comment before I turn it over to Nathan for more detail, is that the national argument is mail-in voting. New Mexico does not have mail-in voting. And so our constituents in New Mexico and especially Bernalillo County need to understand a mail-in voting state is a state that only gives you one option to vote, and that's by mail. New Mexico is not that state. Colorado is that state, Oregon is that state, Washington is that state, etc. New Mexico still provides all three options to vote. By mail, which we call absentee, in person during the early voting period, and election day, which is on election day. So the voter can make their choice. We are not an all mail ballot state. And that's very clear, and the constituents need to understand that. So when they hear this talk at the national level about all mail ballots, that's not New Mexico, because the voter can choose to go in person. And that's very important for a voter to understand. So they can feel that they're executing their right to vote the way they want to. With that, I'll turn it over to Nathan for more nuts and bolts. And Linda.
Let me answer a couple of questions I see in the chat here. One of the first questions is for drop-off voting at the fairgrounds. That will be only during early voting, and it will be 8 to 5, only during early voting. The one at 5th and Marquette will be election day, and that'll be 7 to 7, because that's what the polls are open on election day. So you'll have 2 drop-off points, one for early voting at the state fair, election day at 5th and Marquette. Another question was watchers and challengers. They don't come through our office, they go through your party. So they would be contacting Flora or Margelliston or the Republican representatives to sign up, and then we're notified of that. We do not handle that ourselves. Let's see, what else? And it is only drop off for the mobile spot. There is only drop off only. There won't be any ballots there. You won't be able to do anything there except drop off your ballot. If I miss somebody's question there, type it in again, and I'll be glad to holler at you. Thank you. We'll go to Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan, before you go on, let me add to that. So it's very important that when you do get your absentee ballot, if you mess a ballot up, and nobody's perfect, contact our office. Don't take that ballot especially to the state fairgrounds, because we can't issue you a replacement ballot. So the first thing the voter needs to do, if they mark their ballot incorrectly and they realize it, the first thing the voter needs to do is contact our office and get direction. If the voter asks for the absentee ballot and it's a week before the election and they still haven't got it and they're starting to get worried and they think, well, I need to call, what else can I do? The voter can actually call us, and our option to them would be, if you feel you can go in person to vote at an early voting site, you may do that, or you can wait election day and do that. And they will vote normally. There'll be a little bit of paperwork they have to fill out, but as long as we don't have that ballot back in our possession, the voter can go in and cast a ballot normally, not a provisional ballot. And so we'll get into those. We'll get into those details as we move on. Thank you, Nathan.
Hold on, Jaime, Jamie or Jaime, which would you?
Hey, either one.
Either one.
So one of the questions was also about the application. If someone applies for a ballot, will they automatically be sent an application even if they've already sent in their application or applied online?
Okay, so to answer that question, I'm going to answer it in two ways. The application for an absentee ballot has to be executed by the voter for each and every election. So if the question is, hey, I filled one out for the primary and I voted absentee, will I just get the ballot again? The answer is no. You still have to execute another application. If they've executed an absentee application for this election, the upcoming general, and we've accepted it, they just need to wait, and on the 28th day, we'll start mailing them out, which would be, I believe, August 6th.
And everyone on September 14th, I believe, every voter, eligible voter, will be sent absentee ballot applications. But if they've already submitted an application, then will they be sent another application? No.
So the answer to that is no. Okay. So the applications that we're accepting now, they will not get another application. So the application that they have completed now is a state application that was probably mailed by a third-party group, which it is a legal document. It's a legal form. So if it came back, we've accepted it. We will not send them another one. That doesn't mean that another third-party group may send them another one. So if they get another one and they're confused or they're wondering what's going on, the best thing to do is call our office to make sure.
Thank you very much for that.
Let me throw in there too, Flora. People need to be patient, because if you have mailed in one of the third-party ones and we've got it, or you're waiting until we mail them out September 14th and then you mail it back, just remember that it's not going to be until the 6th of October before we start mailing out ballots. So there's going to be a little bit of a lag. It's not a fast thing back and forth. It's all done by statute. And something I'd like to suggest people do, in about 20 days, the sample ballots will be online. They should go online and get their voter information and print a sample ballot. That way they can look at it, go ahead and fill it out to their liking, study the questions. There's lots of questions. We have a big ballot in Bernalillo County. And then when they get their ballot, they can fill it out and mail it back right away, or they've got a sheet to take with them to go to the polling place. That'll make it much quicker. And like Jamie and I were talking, you don't go to the grocery store without a grocery list. Get a sample ballot and take it with you. It'll speed you along a little bit. But be patient, because there is time in between these things that we have to do.
And the online portal, I apologize, Nathan, I know we're cutting into your time here. The online portal, it's my understanding that that will be open September 1st is what the date is that correct?
Well, that online portal is not from us. It's not something that we maintain. That is done by the Secretary of State. That is maintenance and health through her office. And she has to open that. So I'm sure it's going to happen soon. She just hasn't notified us as to when. That's not something that we do in our office.
So that's the Secretary of State's office.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then also the nmvote.org. I went there to confirm that my application for a ballot had been received, and I saw that it had in 2 days.
So there you go.
Been received and processed. So thank you very much to you and your staff for that. Is that the best way to confirm that your ballot has been received?
Absolutely.
Your application has been received? Okay.
Now,
Great.
when I gave you those numbers at the beginning, we're still working on that. So if you did that, say last Monday, we've only done 28,000 and we got 43 right now. So we're working as fast as we can. So your little check may not show up for a few days. So there again, you got to be patient. It's just so much. There's
Right.
so many people. This is going to be an exciting election.
It is.
I'll shut up and let Nathan talk.
Yes, Nathan.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. Sorry, I was on mute. But I know Jamie and Linda covered a lot of information there. So I just want to kind of build up on that and answer any other questions in further detail that they may have. To put in perspective, this is going to be an unprecedented general election. We had over 120,000 executed absentee ballots come back to our office in the primary. And we're anticipating a larger turnout in respect to absentee in the general election. Key dates and times are going to be October 6th, in-person absentee. We'll be sending out all of our absentee ballots on October 6th. If you had a registered application for that. In addition to that, our clerk's annex will be open for you to vote in person if you'd like. Furthermore, I think somebody asked the question of the times for our drop-off location at the State Fair. It will begin October 6th, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday until October 16th. And then on October 17th, when early voting opens up at all of our 20 early voting locations, the mobile voting unit will also be utilized as a drop-off location Monday through Saturday, 8 to 5, October 17th through October 31st. Now, the mobile voting unit will not be utilized as a drop-off location on election day, like Linda said, but we will have a drop-off location set up at our downtown office located off of 5th and Marquette, and we'll have a tent there with staff available to receive your ballot. So that's the great ideas that the clerk has been coming up with to make it convenient and safe for everyone to do that. In addition, if you didn't want to go down the avenue of absentee voting, you can go to our one of our 72 election day locations, 7 to 7, or our early voting locations, which we have 20, which those are going to be 10 to 7, Monday through Saturday, starting October 17th. So those are a lot of dates I know I'm giving you guys, and we're publicizing those on our website at berncovotes.org. So feel free to visit that site and check that out. Furthermore, you can also ask us any questions if we don't get to answer them today at clerk@bernco.gov. Once again, that's clerk@bernco.gov. So if we don't answer a question or you think of something else in further detail, you can feel free to visit that email and we'll be responding to you very promptly. A couple other things I wanted to touch on. You can drop off your absentee ballot at any of our early voting or election day sites as well. A common theme that we saw during the primary is people would assume then at that point, well, I can just bring my ballot in without actually encasing it in the outer envelope. If you are filling out an absentee ballot, you do have to enclose it in the envelope and you have to meet the criteria in respect to the state statutes that need to be filled out on the outer envelope in order for that ballot to be counted. We did have a new law that passed in the emergency session, SB4, that did change some of the procedures for absentee voting. So you will see that coming up. And so when you get your absentee ballot, You want to make sure that is filled out completely and sent back to our office, whatever avenue you feel is most convenient and safe, in the mail, our drop-off locations, or you can do it in person at our office as well. If at that point we do go through the qualification process and there is an issue, we will notify you and attempt to cure that prior to election day. Other than that, I want to just stand for questions. Thank you guys for having us. We want to answer anything you have and be as transparent as possible.
So thank you, Nathan. And I want to address a couple of the chat questions. One is, can the sample ballot have a larger print? The sample ballot is a PDF that we push through. You'll find that on nmvote.org when you look up your voting information. Since it is a sample ballot, you should be able to enlarge it on the screen. But if you print it, even printing it on legal paper, it's going to be a small print. So if you have to print it at home, and it's going to probably be on 8.5 by 11 regular paper, print it, keep your PDF on your screen, enlarge your PDF, see what it's saying, and then address that with your what you printed at home. Now remember, our ballots are 19 inches long. So most people, when they print the sample ballot via nmvote.org, it is really small. It's a little bit bigger when you go to the polling place. I think it's about 9-point font. But when you print it onto a smaller piece of paper, it gets really small. When will the sample ballots be available? We can say for sure the sample ballots will be available 45 days before the election. I don't know that date. Nathan may know that date. And one other question I want to address, the phone. If we have to call the Bureau of Elections for any questions, what's the best number to call? The best number to call is 243-VOTE, 243-VOTE. And you'll get into a telephone call system where you'll press 1 for voter registration, 2 for absentee, 3 for poll workers, and so on. So you'll be able to go right to the part of the office that you need to speak to. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And so for clarification, the absentee ballot request can be printed, but not the actual ballot itself, correct?
No, you can print the absentee ballot. You can print the PDF, the sample ballot.
The sample ballot, but not the ballot that you will turn in and vote.
Correct. Yeah, the sample ballot is missing many things that the voting system looks for. We have header codes, channel codes, so it's all basically encrypted for only that voting system that we use here to read. So if somebody would try to print a sample ballot, even on 19-inch paper, front and back, the machine could never read that. The actual ballot is a pretty heavyweight paper. It's really thick and it's hard, you know, for most people, unless they're in the printing company, they wouldn't be able to get their hands on that type of ballot, but that type of paper. But even if they did, and they got into the polling place and tried to feed into that machine, the machine would reject it because it just doesn't have the proprietary codes to say, hey, this is one of my ballots, so I can't read you, and it'll kick it out.
Thank you. Something that, as I had started this conversation with Clerk Linda Stover, she said a phrase that really stuck with me, and that was citizen election, that this is a citizen election. Linda, can you explain a little bit more about that? You're muted.
I think people forget sometimes that we run our elections by citizens. There are poll workers, there are election staff. Our county employees in the Bureau of Elections will set all this up, organize it, get it all planned out. But you guys come in and run it. You actually, that's why we have poll workers, that's why we have election officials. And so when people are saying, well, the clerk's office is doing this and that, no, you guys are doing this and that. So we really, when you go in and see a poll worker, that's probably your neighbor, your cousin, your aunt, somebody you go to church with, be kind to them, be nice to them, because They are working really hard, just like you, trying to, and like us, to try and do a good election. This election is run by citizens, all of us in our community. You have to be a registered voter in the county and have to be 17 years of age, I believe, and then you can be a poll worker. And we would call us. We need you. Please, God.
That's one of the questions that came up. How is the staffing right now? How is it looking for staffing? And we also had a question from someone who said they applied to be a poll worker and they haven't heard back from anybody. So if you could address
that to Nathan.
Okay, Nathan.
Yes. So the question is, how many are we looking for? We're looking at approximately 900 people to facilitate this election. It's a very large election. We have a large database of people that we call that work past elections that are interested in. And we have a staff of about 5 or 6 people that's their job right now, is to call people to set you up in the shift board system that we have in place. If you are interested in being a poll official and they haven't called you back, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at clerk@bernco, but they may have you on the list. What my staff has assured me of is that they have a list of about, I would say, over 2,500 people that they're currently calling. And it just might be that they haven't got to you yet on that list. They started as of last week calling people. So you will get a call here within the next week or so. If you haven't, or even if you are concerned that maybe you haven't got to the right person, feel free to email us at clerk@bernco, and I follow up with those calls to make sure we are following up with those people so we can get an update on that. So we are well positioned to fulfill a lot of that staff very early on. We've had a great showing of support of people really interested in this election. So we've had about 300 people who've already checked yes, count me in for this election. But we've also had a lot of people that are very concerned with the coronavirus and a lot of other aspects that they may not be involved. So we're definitely going to need more staff than we have currently right now. So please don't get discouraged if we haven't called you back. We will get to you at one point, but if we haven't yet and you are concerned, reach out to us at Clerk&Bernco. And we are looking at a system updating all the time to see who we called on that list and who we haven't. And we still have quite a few people to call on that list to get to everybody that's been showing interest, at least, or have been interested in working past elections.
And what precautions are you taking to make sure that people who work for this election are safe?
And thank you for asking that question. That's the predominant question that people ask when we reach out to them. And the answer to that is we're doing everything we can within our possibilities. So with respect to PPE, so protective equipment, we will provide that to all poll officials. We have a number of different things, from gloves, face shields, masks, wipes, sanitization sprays. In addition to that, we've partnered with emergency management with the county. They are working on providing us, similar to the primary, staff dedicated to just wiping down all of the high traffic areas that have been touched. Anything that has a lot of reciprocating contact, we make sure we wipe that down before it gets circulated back. We have staff that's dedicated to help line control, making sure spacing is taped off and spaced adequately and properly. Like Jamie said, 6 feet apart is our goal, to have everybody do that. And so if everybody can stay within that space frame, that's great. Additionally, we are also spraying the sites. We did this last election. We sprayed all of the sites from a professional company. They went and sanitized the sites individually very thoroughly. And we also monitor on a daily basis. We have people that go through just to monitor to make sure everything is going according to plan. And so we're very thorough in that. We take it very seriously. We partner with emergency management. We have weekly meetings, following up on that as we get closer to the election to ensure that we're doing everything that we can.
Thank you for that very much. One of the questions that came in at advance was from someone who said, they know that you're expecting a high volume of mail-in absentee ballots, and she says she doesn't have the stamina to be a poll worker, but she'd be happy to work 4 to 6 hours. Is there some kind of shift like that would be available for someone who can give not a 13-hour shift, not a lot of time, but can just come in and help?
My advice to her is just to, when we contact her, give us that information and what she's available to work with and what her timeframes are. And we'll do what we can to fit her in some capacity. I mean, we do have some available shifts that might benefit her better for that, or we can use her in some capacity, but her to reach out to us first. We don't want to discourage anybody from trying to show their support in one way or another. We're going to need a lot of hands for this election to be successful. So if she's willing to even dedicate that much, reach out to our office and we'll try to find something we can to work within that realm. We do encourage people to try to give us dedication for the entire shift, because it's hard to, in scheduling and coordinating, if people are at 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. We try to maintain a consistent schedule for all poll officials at the sites. For the absentee board, we try to work an 8-hour shift, and that's actually in accordance with statute initially. And as we get closer, 5 days prior to the election, we start working longer hours. So what I would ask her to do is maybe look into working on the election board initially. And as we start ramping up like that, I can communicate to her and see what she can do. And we can do it on a one-off basis. But traditionally, we do try to keep those consistent hours for everybody for scheduling and coordinating sake, because it's a lot of people to work with. But we are needing hands. So if she wants to dedicate some time, just reach out to the staff, make them aware of what she can and can do, and we'll do what we can to fit her in where we can.
Thank you very much for that. Linda, you're muted there.
Flora, there's been a couple of questions about people dropping off ballots for people. I'm going to let Jamie explain how that's done as far as handing off ballots for someone else.
Yes, handing off ballots for someone else, and also can they take their own? Is there a place for an application when people fill out their application for a ballot? Can they just deliver it to the clerk's office?
Yeah, so to answer the absentee application, yes, they can deliver it to our office. Our building is closed, so they'll need to call us and let us know that they're coming down here. We'll ask them to call when they're at the front of the building, because the building security will not let them in, and we'll go down and pick that up for them. As far as delivering ballots for other people, executed, completed absentee ballots. And Nathan may correct me on this, but the law is clear that a family member must bring that in. You must be part of this family member. However, we really don't ask the question if you're a family member or not. There's a place on the back of the ballot to be filled out by the person bringing the ballot in for them. In this pandemic, we understand that one person may be bringing in several ballots from their small community. I think the most important thing is if you're going to have if you have nobody to bring a ballot in for you that's executed, and you know of somebody that can bring that in for you, I think as a voter, you need to feel comfortable with that. I would say don't just give your executed, completed absentee ballot to anybody that comes to your door saying, hey, I'll bring in your ballot. Be comfortable and be assured that you know that person that's carrying your ballot in for you. And I'll let Nathan speak more on the law on that, but we're definitely, if somebody drives up to say our mobile voting unit for mail drop-off at the state fair, and that person has 5 ballots to drop off, they're going to put them into the ballot box. We're trusting that each of those 5 voters is very confident in who they allowed bring their ballot in. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you have nobody to bring in your ballot and you don't want to send it in through the mail, just make sure that you just don't give it to anybody to bring in. Because that's when we start hearing problems that occur. And we get those calls periodically that somebody has come by my house and said, when you get done with your ballot, call us, here's our number, we'll come and pick it up. And they're not comfortable with that. So, you know, that's just really the voter's gut feeling, and it's their ballot. So they just need to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Great. So Nathan, what is the law on that? Who should be able to deliver ballots?
So the law is pretty clear in that it has to be somebody related to you within that household. So one thing that Jamie did mention, there's an attestation on the outer envelope of the absentee ballot that you are attesting that you are that family member for that particular person that you're dropping off the ballot for. Now, with that being said, we don't do anything from that point to verify that that attestation is true and correct. That is between you and the person that you're delivering the ballot to be dropped off. So we understand in this current climate that there are some difficulties in getting your ballot to us. And we want to ensure that everybody that wants to vote, their ballot is counted and received in our office. So the direction to our staff is, if there's an attestation on that, or if somebody's coming to drop those ballots off, it is not our place to make that judgment call on that. And then they're going to drop that off. And there are processes in place within the law that we do a verification process later on with the absentee board. And people are more than welcome to come and see those processes in place within our voter machine warehouse. And we are very confident that we can capture any anomalies there prior to there being any sort of major issue.
Wonderful.
Nathan, let me jump in right quick. There's lots of questions about VRAs. Would you talk about same-day registration?
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. So same-day registration, and I understand it's going to be different in the primary than it was in the general, so we're going to be very clear on that. In the primary, you weren't allowed to change party affiliation, but you could update your registration in terms of your address and things like that. In the general election, you'll be allowed to, in early voting only, update your registration, register brand new, or change your party affiliation at 7 of our voting locations. We strategically place them throughout our early voting locations so that we have one in the South Valley, we have one in the North Valley, we have 2 on the east side of town, one in the Northeast, one in the Southeast, and then 2 on the west side of town, one in the Southwest and one in the Northwest. And then we have one in the heart of of Bernalillo County, or at least close to our office at the clerk's annex. So that was our goal, is that with people, if they wanted to update their registration. So let's say you go to a voting location and you say, you know what, I realized I moved since my last time I registered and I'm going to be voting for the wrong people. And we understand it's very important. Our legislative districts, our Senate districts, our judicial districts are all going to be on these ballots. So those are things that we can update that, as to those 7 locations. At that point, you will receive the right ballot that you updated, because it's in real time that we correct that with the same day registration. And then you can print that, they'll print that ballot at our ballot on demand stations, and you can cast that ballot same day. It's about a 15-minute turnaround all in all, because what happens is you're going to update your registration. It comes to our staff and our voter registration. They quickly update your record. They send notification back to the site. And at that point, the BOD is communicating to our data registration system in real time, and we can issue that ballot. And it's a very convenient and effective way to get the correct ballot to you, or you can vote in general if you haven't registered before that.
Okay,
But you can only do same-day registration at those locations in our office, because 27 days prior to the election, our books close. So if you say, well, I'll just do it at home, you can't do that after that 27 days prior to the election. You have to come into those 7 locations.
Great, that's wonderful clarification. Thank you for that, Nathan. There were some questions sent in ahead of time about rejecting ballots. What percentage of mailed-in ballots were rejected? What percentage of ballots overall were rejected because they arrived too late? And of those rejected ballots, for some other reason, what were the most common errors made by the voter that caused the ballot to be rejected?
I could answer that if you'd like me, Linda. Do that.
Go ahead.
So to answer that question, for the rejection process, the most common issue with rejections prior to election day is simply they don't sign the ballot, the outer envelope of the ballot. People forget to do that. That is the most predominant issue that we see. So you have to ensure you're reading all of the information very thoroughly and feeling very confident that everything's been filled out completely, and then you send it into our office. That's the most common theme prior to election day. Now, the question was, how many ballots did we receive after the deadline, which has to be received in our office by 7 p.m. election day? And the answer was not as many as you would think. We're very confident. We coordinate very well with the USPS. And we had over 120,000 or around 120,000 absentee ballots executed, received in our office prior to election day. After election day, we had about 2,000 ballots received after that time frame. And we still have a couple here and there that will trickle in, which is strange. I understand that. But we do have, majority of them are coming in probably about 1, 2, 3 days, it may be a week late after the election. And that's because some people sent them in very, very late. So if you're very concerned about that or uncomfortable about that, you can deliver them in person to our office at all the locations, or you can actually go to a polling location and you can fill out what's called an affidavit of non-vote and actually get a traditional ballot issued to you there and vote that ballot as well.
Wonderful. As far as, there's a lot of dates coming around, and I think there's some confusion here about the application for the ballot and the actual ballot date. So could you clarify some dates around those, because I see some questions coming through about that. When will the actual ballots be available for us to view, and when are the absentee, when does the absentee ballot process, what are those dates that surround that? The application process, sorry.
So you can apply for a ballot now. So the application, you can print one out from our burncovotes.org website. It's a PDF, fill it out and mail it back to us. You can utilize, like Jamie said earlier, one of the third-party agency sends you those state prescribed applications already. You can mail those back to our office. And Linda said, like she said, we've already received about 44,000 of those that we're currently in the process of registering into the database to send a ballot. And we will be sending on September 14th to everybody that hasn't requested one as of that date, an application from our office. Now, at that point, we will be sending out ballots October 6th. If you've applied prior to that date, we'll be sending out ballots to all those that applied on October 6th. So we work with sending those out. Now, you can still receive an absentee ballot after that date, but if you've applied prior to that one, that's our target date of sending them out to you.
And when is the sample ballot going to be available?
That'll be like Jamie said, 45 days prior to the election, we'll have that ready and available. And keep in mind, guys, I know a lot of people are asking, well, why can't we have one now? Well, we just yesterday, we finalized some of the people were still withdrawing from the ballot yesterday. That was the deadline for that, or adding themselves in respect to some of the vacant positions. And even some ballot questions came in very late. So then after that, we have to go put them in, proof them, coordinate with the Secretary of State's office and get everything finalized to have a sample for viewing. So that's what we're going to be currently working on now. So middle of September, 45 days prior to the election.
So 45 days, sample ballots, October 6th, the actual ballots.
That's correct.
And so in theory, you can start getting those ballots back within a day or two after October 6th. At what point do you start counting the absentee ballots that are coming in?
So that's a good question. And the answer to that is we don't count the ballots until election day, 7 p.m. after the books are closed. What we do is we register the ballots in accordance with statute with the absentee board. And that I believe is 10 days prior to the new statute is 10 days prior to the election. The absentee board can start processing those and registering those to be tabulated, but nothing gets tabulated or counted, so to speak, until 7 p.m. election night.
So as soon as those come in, they get tabulated, no matter.
Well, no, they get registered. So we
Registered, I'm sorry.
process, register them into, but nobody knows the outcome of the elections or the races until 7 p.m. election night, was when actually we can convert it to tabulation.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Yeah, so I'd like to weigh in on something here. So we've been talking about these dates. 45 days before the election is going to be, oh, I just had it, September 19th, I believe.
Right.
So September 19th is for sure the day that a voter can go on to the state website, nmvote.org, look up their voter information and see the sample ballot and view it and print it if they choose. On that location will also be all of our early voting locations and election day vote centers. I think we also have that attached to our burncoatvotes.org or our county clerk's webpage, where you can go in and map the locations to see which is closest to you if you choose to vote in person, or if you're going to drop off an absentee ballot. So we've been talking about absentee, the application process, once it gets accepted, when the ballots go out. So we have to be very clear that from October 5th towards the election, we're still going to be accepting absentee applications and still sending out absentee ballots. So there's no deadline there. The deadline happens, I believe, the last day we.
October 20th, Jamie.
Huh?
You got muted, Jamie.
October 20th, Jamie, is the last day.
Yeah, so October 20th. And Senate Bill 4 changed that for this election. I think, no, for permanently, I believe. That we used to accept the application up to the Thursday prior to the election. So if we had an application for absentee ballot on Thursday prior to the election, on Friday we would mail out the ballot. That's been pushed back to the Tuesday before the election. So that would be the last day that any applications will be accepted by our office. So the Wednesday before the election would be the last group of absentee ballots that get mailed out. Hopefully that's going to be enough time for the ballot to get to the voter to execute the ballot and get it back to us. Now those people that are running, those voters that are running close to the deadline, one thing they need to understand is if they receive their ballot, if they're within a week before the election, it might be best practice for them to drop it off at an early voting location or at an election day vote center or election day polling place. That would be best practice if they can. Thank you.
Wonderful. And can you repeat the address of the office? But once again, if someone is asking about that, there is not anybody there. You'd have to call in advance in order for someone to let you into the building, correct? So they want to know the address and if there's parking, and then also the website where the sample ballot would appear. If you could please put that in the chat, that would be wonderful. And then we have one other clarifying question after we finish that.
Yeah, so the address of our office is 1 Civic Plaza Northwest. So we're one of the buildings right on Civic Plaza by the old City Hall building. Parking is available, but it is paid parking. You may be able to park close because there's not a lot of people downtown, and call us from your phone, and then we can communicate with you where you can just park quickly and we can get that absentee application from you for that voter that's asking. And I will type in the website to the state, and you can find that through our website also. So if somebody goes to our website, Bernalillo County Clerk, any of those links for look up your voter information or look up your sample ballot will link you. You leave our site and you go to the state, but I'll put the state website on here and our website also in the chat for people to see.
Thank you. And Nathan, there's a question for clarification here. For ballots, let's see, for the ballots you receive early enough where the voter failed to sign an absentee ballot, did I understand an attempt is made to contact the voter so the error can be rectified?
Yes, now that has changed since past elections. So that with the passing of SB4 in this last special session, it now calls for us to, if we reject a ballot for one reason or another, we are to notify that particular person within 1 day, to send out a notification within 1 day. And then at that point, they have an opportunity to cure that rejection. If it's, for example, a signature, they can sign. If it's a verification some other way, they can have an opportunity to correct that prior to election day. And we're working on coordinating a staff dedicated to dealing with those particular issues. And hopefully there won't be a lot, but we are hoping to mitigate the amount by making people aware through media and what you can do to protect yourself. And like I said, signing the outer envelope. But if for some reason you say, oh, I forgot, at that point we will reach out to you, make you aware, and you can come in and correct that. Now, if for some reason you can't correct that prior to election day, that does not mean you will not have an opportunity still to cure that. It would just have to be done at a different time frame with our hearing board.
Nathan, you want to talk about the barcodes? There's a question here about barcodes. You or Jamie, either one?
Do you know, I don't see the barcode question. Do you know what it's asking?
It says, are there going to be barcodes on the return envelope to track ballots through USPS?
And the answer is yes, there should be a tracking system in place that the Secretary of State is setting up in coordination with the USPS for there to be a tracking system for your ballot. Unfortunately, we haven't been given a lot of information on that, on how the system's supposed to be set up and working. But we are looking forward to having that put in place, and we'll see how that works this particular election. We haven't been provided a lot of details on that yet, but in statute, in the SB4 law, something was supposed to be set up in place for the general. We were assured by the Secretary of State that they have a process in place, and they're working on finalizing everything. And I don't have a lot of details. I apologize for that on that. But yes, the answer is there is going to be something on there for tracking purposes.
Wonderful. Thank
and
you.
so I would, excuse me, but I'd add on to that, speaking of barcodes, there will be an additional barcode on all the information that identifies your voter voter ID number. So that's for us internally to check your ballot in, so to speak, when we get it. So there will be I think the U.S. Postal Service barcode is like a orangish, pinkish type barcode on the bottom of the envelope. That's not our barcode, but that's the barcode Nathan was speaking of. We will have additional barcodes with the information that's coming back with the ballot. Again, the ballot has no barcode, so I want to make that very clear. Once those absentee, the law is very specific. When they separate the outer envelope and the inner secrecy envelope, they're separating the identity of that ballot. And that's very, very important because our votes are private and you know, they shouldn't be shown to people. So you'll only see barcodes on the mailer that goes out, the outer envelope, and the mailer that comes back. The secrecy envelope and the ballot itself do not have barcodes. They do have a channel code and like a barcode looking thing up in the top right-hand side, but that's a proprietary code for the system to know what precinct that ballot belongs to. It has nothing, it's not attached to a voter.
Let me jump in right quick. Flora, I had mentioned I'd have to leave a little early.
Yes.
So I'm going to step out, but Jamie and Nathan are going to stay with you. It's nice to see everybody. We'll see you at the polls. Happy voting.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. So we'll go, thank you. We have a few more questions, if you don't mind staying on, Jamie and Nathan, and talking. There were questions about, and we had covered this with the voting locations are going to have a line for voters and a line for the, to drop off the ballot, absentee ballot, if people want to drop it off in person. Will that be available on election day as well? Will there be all the locations have those two lines?
So I want to kind of clarify that a little bit. Logistically, at a lot of our locations, we don't have the ability to create two individual lines just because of the COVID-related spacing and also one area of getting in and exiting, because we don't want to create additional spacings for that. So what our plan is to do is to have, if you have your absentee ballot, we're going to have people monitoring the lines, and they say, okay, who has their absentee ballot? Okay, we're going to kind of bring you to the front of the line so you can go and drop it off and exit through a separate area. So there won't be two separate lines, but you will be expedited by getting in and dropping it off and leaving. You won't have to be stuck in the line waiting to get your BOD system processed and the ballot issued to you. And then at that point, filling it out and then cashing the tabulator. You simply have your ballot. Somebody's there going to be accounting for the line. You have your absentee ballot. Please come to the front, drop it off, and then you can exit at that.
And then they'll also have the opportunity to do the drive up at 2nd and Marquette, is that right?
That's correct.
5th and Marquette. Okay.
Right, yeah, right in front of One Civic Plaza, 5th and Marquette, or the State Fairgrounds on San Pedro and Copper Gate 3 is where that one will be held at. So San Pedro and Copper Gate 3 for the State Fairgrounds. And it will be on election day for the early voting locations and downtown, but not for the State Fair.
Okay, great. Did you have something to add to that, Jamie?
Yeah, you must have read my face. Yeah, so as we get closer, Linda will start doing some public service announcements, and we'll be working through the media to identify that. So so that when voters, hopefully when they get there, we don't want them to go drop off their absentee ballot and see, because remember, I talked about the lines. So a line that's with 20 people in line or 15 people in line doesn't look very big, but when you space them out 6 feet, it looks like a long line. So we don't want people to get to the locations and say, I'm just here to drop off my absentee ballot. Oh my God, that line's long, because we're not thinking 6 feet. We just see a long line. So we really need them to get in line so we can identify them, move them to the front, drop off their ballot so they can go on the rest of their day. And that's going to be very important for a very important message for, you know, everybody that's involved in elections and wants this election to be successful to pass on. You know, don't worry about how big that line is. Get in line. We'll find you. We'll find you very quickly.
Thank you. And Nathan, there's a question on what qualifies a person as a caregiver when it comes to someone who can drop off a ballot for them.
So and she's talking about the emergency procedure in case somebody, for some reason, is not able to go on their own account to deliver their absentee ballot or even get one. So that's done the day prior to the election. It's allowed. It's not allowed the entirety of the time. So that's only, say, if somebody can't coordinate working with somebody else to do that, and it's an unforeseen circumstance and it's an emergency. A care provider is to write some sort of notification to our office saying that this person is unable to deliver on their own accord, and they're going to have a runner go on behalf of them with this document. So a care provider is supposed to be the one to deliver, at least write this letter to the runner and deliver to our office to get the absentee ballot to bring back to that person to fill out. And then that runner would return it back to our office. The law isn't very clear on what the definition of a care provider is, but it's usually somebody in the capacity of a nursing home, a hospital, even if there's somebody who's in home care, they're just basically attesting that they are the care provider for this person, and their level of health is depreciated to the level of unable to do anything on their own account, but they still want to vote, and we encourage that for them to do that, deliver that letter to us with that attestation, and then at that point we will deliver the absentee ballot to that runner to give to that person.
Yeah, so I would add to that, Nathan explained that very well. So there are emergency situations. People will end up in the hospital and they need to cast their ballot. And this is one way we can do that. He did mention care facilities and things like that, or being at home and being cared for. And that's very important. We can execute that vote for that person that way also. But what needs to be very clear is that if there's a care provider for somebody in the home, say like me and my mom, and I have a power of attorney, and we get this all the time. They come in and they say, I'm a power of attorney. I should be able to fill out the application. I should be able to sign everything for her. They can't. Power of attorneys do not supersede constitutional rights. So a power of attorney has nothing to do with voting for that individual. That voter still has to execute their signature. And the next question we get in that is they can't sign. They can sign. You get their hand and you have a mark an X, and you write next to it, witnessed, my mom's signature on this date and time. So, so that falls into some areas that get kind of tricky. So if any of your voters out there have this situation, we would highly recommend they give us a call with plenty of time so we could help them through the process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask one last question, then I want to kick it back over to both of you for some wrap-up comments. There's someone that's asking, would you prefer us to vote absentee or in person? How are absentee ballots actually counted, and is it a burden on the office to count them?
The answer, and I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that question. Somebody was asking me a question when they came to my office here.
No problem. Would the clerk's office prefer us to vote absentee or in person? How are absentee ballots actually counted? And is it a burden on the office to count them?
The answer to that is we prefer you just to vote. And whatever avenue you feel is the most safe and secure as you feel best, just vote. That's the answer to that one. And we're more than happy to facilitate the processing of your ballot, whether it's in person or absentee. We are very confident in our system here in Bernalillo County. And if it's through absentee, it's not a burden at all. In fact, we enjoy, this is what we do because we're happy to do it, because we know it's a very important part of our democracy. And so if you want to vote absentee, vote absentee. If you want to vote in person, vote in person. And we will do everything we can within our power to get the election results out on time, and we're confident and secure that we can do that here in Bernalillo County.
That is an absolutely beautiful answer, Nathan. Thank you for that. And I know I said that was the last one, but this other one, the Center for Voter Information application, that has caused some confusion. So if you could please clarify whether those applications are being processed and
Yes, they are being processed. Those are a valid state prescribed application that was delivered within that packet. Now we've had several complaints saying, well, it didn't fit in the envelope right, or it didn't have glue attached to the outer envelope. Unfortunately, we didn't have any control on that because that was sent from a third-party agency. But we do have control of is when we receive the application, which is a correct and true application, we can process it back in our office. And so we do that, and that in total of that 44,000 applications that we received so far, that is included in that part of that.
Wonderful, thank you.
And so I would like to add that there has been another third-party group that has sent out applications, state prescribed. They are legal, you can use them. The best thing for any voter is that if they're worried about it, call our office. Come to the source. You know, don't ask the neighbor, don't ask the person in line at the grocery store. You know, because that's how information kind of gets diluted. But they are, as Nathan said, they are legitimate, they are legal. We are processing them.
Wonderful.
And we probably will see more types of election information coming out before this election. We usually do, and I don't know how many presidential elections this is for me, but I think, I hate to date myself, but I started in Reagan's second term as that was my first presidential election. So I've seen presidential elections. There's just so much more happening and so much more information going out from third party. We call third party agencies or groups, and we just hope that those third party agencies or groups, if they contact us, we just try to keep them, you know, in focus. And so far, everything has been really well.
Well, thank you both for all your work. Jamie, there's a comment here about looking 10 years younger without the mustache. I just wanted to make sure you saw that one.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to go back around to you for some closing comments. Anything that you have, any last thoughts that you'd like to share with people? Jamie?
Yeah, you know, this presidential election is important. It's important for our country. Probably the most important governing body that governs our community is our local school board. So local school boards are very important to participate in. They teach our children. They choose the curriculum that our children and how they learn. I used to, when I was the elections administrator prior to retirement and prior to coming back, the elementary schools would sometimes want to come in to see what we do. And one question I'd always ask them, what is the most important election to vote in? Who's the most important elected official? And of course, all the elementary school kids would say, well, of course, the President of the United States or the governor. And I'd ask them one question. If you went outside of your house and the street on by your house was just falling apart and everything, would you call the president to get it fixed? Or would you call the governor? And so a lot of the elementary school teachers would say, we never thought about it that way. So all the level of governments are very important, and especially this presidential is important. So what I would like to say, and I think what Linda mirrors, is that whether it's a school board election, whether it's a soil and water conservation district election, a municipal election, a state election, a county election, or a presidential election, they're very important. We are the people. We decide who runs our governments. Get involved, and the best way to get involved is to vote.
Thank you. Amen to that, Brother Jamie. And Nathan, any closing thoughts?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to come here and just share what we have. Like I said initially, we want to be as transparent and encouraging as possible. You know, it reinvigorates me and my staff just to see people's passion and enthusiasm around voting. And this is why we do it. And so thank you for this opportunity to show what we know. And any questions or concerns or just any input that you guys have, feel free to reach out to our office. We're always encouraging people. And like I said, it reinvigorates us to see that encouragement and passion. And so continue doing what you guys do too. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. To clarify, the 243-VOTE is the number for the Bureau of Election. Wonderful. And nmvote.org is a wonderful resource as well. You two have been so informative. Thank you. I have so much confidence in our system. It's because we have capable people. You are taking care of us and taking care of our vote, and that means everything, as you were saying, in a democracy. So thank you. To those of you who are online, you can, if you go to the bottom of the chat, you want to save the chat, there's a little 3 ellipses down at the bottom, and if you hover over that, that says more, you'll get the option to save the chat. It'll save that to your local hard drive, and you can go back and refer to it. And I want to thank Sue Walensky, the wonderful Sue Walensky, who has been monitoring the chat for us. Thank you so much, Sue. And thank you to Ivan Pfeiffer for recording this. It'll be made available on our website. And to the wonderful Samuel Nevarez for streaming this on Facebook for us. And thank you also to Clerk Stover for joining us. And she's off to her next meeting, and we wish her well there. Thank you, everybody. And happy voting. Let's get out that vote and do it well. Thank you. Bye-bye.